Hello, happy Wednesday, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, so glad to see everyone. Welcome to Prowess Goes Live, the OBM opportunity, our weekly show where we are asking and answering and giving you resources on how to be an online business manager. And today is all about pricing, one of the top questions we get from all of you. So, to kick things off, let's have a question. So put into chat, what is the last thing that you bought yourself and didn't even look at the price? What is the last thing you bought yourself and didn't even look at the price? Put that into chat. You wanted it so badly. What was it? Put in the chat. I know y'all are having trouble with this and not putting something in the chat because you can't remember the last thing that you bought yourself. Leah and I were talking about that earlier, and both of us looked at each other like, ooh. And I was like, oh, well, I bought a, oh no, that was for my daughter. Or, oh, I bought a, oh no, that was for so and so. So let's see. Can't remember, Lisa. Probably a pair of shoes. All right, Natalie. Love it. College text. Yes, this is so good. This is so good. Of course, fantastic, fantastic. Um, I was thinking about mine, and mine was a margarita. Like, if I'm being super honest with myself, the last thing that I bought myself was a margarita. I did look at the price, then did look at the price, and was very disappointed at how much that margarita cost. Um, Megan, I don't think I've ever not looked at a price. Also feel that. Yes, yes, yes. Awesome. Again, so good to see all of you. I hope you all in the States had a wonderful 4th of July weekend. Let's get this kicked off. So, hello, hello. I'm Ashley Connell, CEO and founder of Prowess Project. At Prowess, we train and vet online business managers who want fulfilling, flexible lives, being the right hand woman, being the ops wizard, being the integrator. And then we match them up with CEOs who desperately need them because they need to scale. So, when talking about pricing, as I said, it's one of the top things that you all have been asking. Y'all, we can have a full course on pricing, just that. I have spoken to several just pricing experts who have entire businesses on how to price something. So we wanted to really just give you some basics on pricing just to get your, the wheels turning before we dive into everything else. So we are going to walk through the pros and cons of charging hourly versus a retainer as being an online business manager. And as we're going through these, Leah is going to give you some thoughts on, hey, when she was starting her OBM business, how did she think about this? And I'm going to give you some perspective from a client because, again, I'm speaking to them all day, every day about how they want a OBM retainer or hourly cost to be. So we're going to try and give you as much information as possible in this hourly versus retainer conundrum, if you will. All right. How does that sound to everyone? Give me a thumbs up if that sounds good. A thumbs up. Give me a snaps. Give me a yes, Ashley. Love it. Love it. Where are we at? People. Okay. There we go. Yes. Yep. Woo! All right. Perfect. Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. So let's go through hourly first. And so, what this means is you are keeping track of the hours that you spend with your client and charging them at the end of the month of whatever your hourly rate is. Okay. So, let's talk through the pros of charging hourly as an OBM. Number one, super transparent, right? When you're charging hourly, everyone, both you as the OBM and the client, see exactly how many hours you work. They can easily do that math, or you can even have that for them. And so the client knows, oh, okay, I've used X amount of hours. That's going to cost me Y amount of money at any time, right? So it's super, super easy going. You know exactly how much people are taking in money that is being spent. Okay, huge pro. Flexibility is the second pro. The reason why this is a huge pro is because oftentimes clients will say, I don't know how much time I need. I don't know how long this project is going to take. And so when you have that flexibility as an OBM and you're offering, okay, well, I'll just do this hourly. I think it's going to take this amount of hours. Let's just see as we go and have checkpoints. Then a client can decide if they want to ramp up or ramp down. Very, very, very client friendly. Okay. Also, it is super fair. It is super fair when, as the online business manager, because you are paid for every single minute that you are spending working on that client. Okay. Plus, it goes back to that transparency of the client also sees exactly what is happening and exactly how much time you're spending and knows, okay, they need to pay you for that. And this is personally my favorite, which is the fourth pro in this, is it gives you insight. And what I mean by this is it tells you as an online business manager how much time each task takes you. It tells you and helps you understand, oh, okay, this task takes me way longer because energetically, I don't love it. I actually don't like that. So then you'll know and have that data of, hey, this takes a lot of time and it's a lot of effort for me. Maybe I don't want to include that in my in what I do as an OBM. Maybe I want to double down on a different part of being an OBM. And it really helps give you information to better craft your niche, your audience, your offer, your messaging, all of that, because again, you have data to work from. This is especially important when you are a new online business manager and haven't worked in this way before. Maybe you are pivoting from a corporate career, or maybe you were thinking about hours. You just knew that you were going to get a salary. So pros are, again, transparency, flexibility, fairness, and insight. So this is where I want to bring on Leah for a second and just talk to us, Leah. As you were building your OBM business, like what did you think of the pros of hourly?
What I liked about hourly was it was an easy ramp up, or when I was trying to overcome a little bit of that imposter syndrome of I'm putting myself out there and I'm putting a price tag on this new service that I'm offering. It was easier for me to get out that it's X amount per hour. We can work with your budget for how many hours you want, right? I only had one hurdle to get through, which was saying my hourly rate. And it allowed me to build up my confidence before I was ever considering retainers or what that would look like. So it was an easy entry point to start with that hourly marker and move into being, my own service as an OBM that way.
I really like that because you bring up imposter syndrome, which is really, really huge. And sometimes it is hard to ask for money and it is hard to ask for what you're worth. And so for everyone who is a part of OBM University, just so you know, we are doing a deep dive on pricing in our next session, our next monthly session, where we're diving through not only like, hey, how you do all this pricing, but also exactly what Leah's talking about, how you overcome that imposter syndrome. So we'll talk through that a little bit at the end. So again, love that you brought that up, Leah. All right, so those are the major pros of hourly. Let's talk about some cons that you need to consider. The first con is because it's hourly and because you're offering so much flexibility, which oftentimes the client loves, your income isn't as predictable. Oftentimes it's very uncertain. Okay, so your income can really, really fluctuate. And so I think it's really important to think through that when you are deciding between hourly and retainer. How many hours do you really need? Is this going to work for you? Or do you need a lot more clients in order to feel like, I have enough money that to put food on the table, to buy X, Y, and Z, whatever it is that you have on your goal. Okay. Next, hourly, another con, it can limit your earning potential. With an hourly rate, you are capped at how many hours you can possibly work, right? So you can only scale the amount of money that you're making without working more hours, or of course, increasing your rate. So something to really think about. Your earning potential can be limited when, or you're going to have to give up more time, right? Time, money, time, money. And then the third con, which I'm going to give this a con with like an asterisk, but the con that we have seen is it is more admin work because you are having to track and input details on exactly what you're doing each month or each hour, really, because oftentimes your client is going to want to see that. If they are paying hourly, they're going to want to know, oh, okay, well, Leah is my OBM and she just spent 4 hours on what? And may have questions about it. So that can be very, very time consuming and cost more money because it may be more technology. Now, I give that an asterisk because I think that those insights are super, super, super valuable when piecing together your offering or figuring out what you want to do, especially when you're new. But hey, it's still a con because it's still extra work that you may not be paid to do. All right. Leah, anything to consider there on a con perspective that I haven't mentioned or anything you'd like to go on?
The biggest pitfall I see is the research aspect, and that when you are charging hourly, I myself have fallen into this and working with other OBMs, is that we're hesitant to charge for the time that's our learning, or we have to research a solution. We feel like that since there's no productivity for maybe an hour of that time, because you are going and learning and researching, that you feel like you can't charge for it. So that is a mindset obstacle that needs to be addressed. That, again, when you mentioned transparency in the beginning, being transparent about, not an expert here, I have to go research it. So I estimate this will take me 2 hours of time, and putting that into the, your tracking. It's something that you have to mentally be prepared to do and explain, but it is part of being an OBM. You most likely are more efficient at researching that and learning that new skill. And so that is why you were hired.
Completely agree. And as a client, going back to like just hourly in general, I think it would be really important for the OBM to set expectations at the very beginning of how much time things could take, because you also want to make sure that your client isn't going after you and saying, oh, well, this shouldn't take that long. Huge problem you could have if you're doing hourly. So again, it's all about setting expectations up from the very beginning. Lisa had a question. What is the best software for tracking hours? Do you have an opinion on that, Leah?
Ones that I like to use are Toggle is a free one that you can embed right there, on your toolbar in Google, in your Chrome, and use that as a time tracking one. So that's TOGGL, I believe, .com. Or I use even in ClickUp, that's the project management software I've been in, I like to use currently, that has a time tracking in there. If you want to get fancy and you're using something like Airtable, they do have formulas where you can add a time tracking component. So any of those I see work well.
Fantastic. And then Les had a question. How do you come up with your hourly rate? And this is going back to what Leah said about research. You have to research what your market will take. You have to research and be honest with yourself. How experienced are you in this, and how specialized are you? There's a lot of different things that go into that. And again, we're going to be covering a lot of that on our OBM University call this month. The other thing for hourly rate that I would really, really think about is, and I just had a huge conversation with this in one of the networking groups that I'm a part of, which I really loved, but are you getting that client? And are you covering that marketing and sales cost, or is someone else handing you that client? And so how much should your hourly rate be if someone else is absorbing the marketing and sales cost? So something to really think about there. All right. So that's hourly. Anything on hourly that you want us to chit chat through before we hop over to retainer? Awesome. I'm going to dive right in. Okay, so we talked about hourly. Let's talk about a retainer. So what does a retainer mean? A retainer is, you are saying, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Client, here is what you are going to get for X amount of dollars per month. Okay, so you are saying, I'm going to give you these things, and it is going to cost Y amount each month for however many months. And you can decide all of that. You have full on autonomy to that, though they may go back and forth on any sort of negotiation. Okay. But the pros of a retainer, number one, without a doubt, is you have predictable income. I'm sure that is a huge like sigh of relief for so many people out there, especially if you are new to being an online business manager, you're just starting out your business, and quite frankly, you are pivoting from corporate where you know that you have a salary coming in each month that's X amount, right? So definitely something to consider when you are thinking about the pros of a retainer. Next is client commitment. When a client is paying a retainer, oftentimes there's a slightly higher amount of commitment and they feel like you will be around longer. And so it can feel like more of a partnership than the inconsistent up and down of hourly without any parameters around that, right? Because it's easier for someone to delegate tasks, delegate projects if it's not necessarily an hourly thing and it's just hey, you're going to get A, B, C, and D for this many months. Okay. And the third is you can create a really efficient workflow with a retainer. So that allows you as an online business manager to really plan out your week and really plan out your month, your quarter, what have you, and figure out, okay, I have these type of clients, or I can use these type of tools to do X, Y, and Z. And I know that I will be doing this amount of this type of thing. So it does make sense for me to invest in X, Y, and Z tool. It helps you think through all of that. So Leah, let's go through some pros of having a retainer.
For me, this is when I feel like I've really joined that team, like you mentioned, the commitment. And I find that I feel more empowered when I'm working in a retainer situation to bring up forth more creative ideas. Maybe there are new initiatives that in an hourly one, you feel like you almost have to pitch every one and you're keep pulling. So to me, the retainer is really when things get a little more exciting. I feel like I'm in my groove as an OBM and there's a little more fulfillment for me. So that's the personal side of why to bring this into your business offering and look for those retainer opportunities. Cause I just think that that's when we can step into our power, because it's like we're being invited to work for them in a way.
I love that. Great point. I'm trying to think from the client's perspective on why we love retainers is and as the client, I can say, I know that X amount is leaving my bank account a month and I'm going to get Y. So expectations are already set. I know what I'm getting and I know how much money is leaving my bank account. And I can also effectively figure out what the ROI on having my online business manager would be. So just a side note, if any client thinks you are a cost center and not like a growth center, that is completely wrong. An online business manager is someone who brings in revenue. And if you aren't, and if you're confused about that, that is a top thing that you really need to think through. Okay, so really creating the ROI is huge.
Actually, I have a question for you. As a business owner, when you have someone on retainer, for me as the OBM, I feel like the meetings are more effective because it doesn't feel like someone's watching the clock or that's going to take out, there's an hourly charge to get on the phone. Do you find that the communication works any better when someone's in a retainer situation for you?
Depends. It depends on the setup of the retainer. So retainers typically work in two ways, right? A retainer could be, I am working X amount of hours a month. Or a retainer could be, I am giving you X, Y, and Z projects and I receive in a month. So as the client, it really depends on how the entire relationship works. So for example, and I'm going to, we absolutely love Christina who works with us. She works with us part-time. I would never in a million years be looking at the clock and seeing like, oh my gosh, we've been on the phone with Christina for an hour and this is costing X, Y, and Z. Never, because she offers so much value. Instead, I would be like, how do I get more of her time? What does that look like? You know, and so that's how you always want to be thinking about it. And so for me, if your client is even thinking about the time, is even thinking about the like that, there's a bigger problem.
So it goes back to that transparency and that communication, which I think is key. So again, for me, I love how you set that up, is that when you know this client and you really mesh, this is a great opportunity to explore the retainer, because you know both of you are getting all the value out of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And cheers to Christina.
She's magical.
Truly, truly. All right, let's hop over to the pros of a retainer. Top pro, top pro, scope creep. Scope creep. With a retainer, you risk so much that you are going to say, hey, I want X, Y, Z. And then your client's going to be like, oh, but I thought that 1, 2, and 3 was included in Z. And it doesn't have that on the statement of work. So are you going to go do that? So a lot of times with a retainer, if you're not looking at this hourly at all, like you could be doing a lot more work and not getting compensated for it. So that one is really, really huge. Really, really, really want to, highlight, underline, bold that risk of scope creep, because I have absolutely been the person who, I've been both, right? I've been both the person who thought I was getting more and probably crept the scope a bit, and also had the scope creep on me. So anyway, second con is over or under utilization. So when you're thinking about this, because it's a retainer and it's not hourly, there can be lost income for the online business manager if you are doing more, or the communication or expectations are not set, kind of like we're going through scope creep, but you may be overutilized and doing too much for what you're going to say, or you may not even know any better. As humans, especially people who lean forward, which are all of you, we overestimate what we can get done and we underestimate of how long it's going to take. So you can see where that plus scope creep can be a massive, massive danger for you when building your business, especially when you're getting it off the ground. And then the third con is lack of transparency. Because it's not an hourly rate, the person or the client doesn't know what you're doing, right? And you need to make sure that in the retainer and in the contract and in the statement of work, you are saying very specifically exactly what's going to happen, and they're going to trust that you are getting that done. And if they don't trust you, you may get a million different questions of, it didn't feel like you were doing that. It didn't feel like you gave me enough time. It didn't feel like, $2,000 worth of work, whatever that is. There's lack of transparency. I love that Brene Brown says, clear is kind. And so you can see here how that a client can, not meaning to be unkind, or an OBM isn't meaning to be unkind when they're not giving that transparency, when they're not being really clear. It's just a problem when it comes to retainer. There's less transparency. So with that, Leah, do you have anything to share on retainers?
You hit the nail on the head with the scope creep, right? That might be one of the biggest problems. Also kind of blended in there is when your expertise, you've grown in your skills as an OBM, and maybe that is now more valuable from a price point. But since it's in a retainer, it's kind of folded in. And I go back to that, just because you can doesn't mean you should. You'll be getting asked to do more and more because they see your skill and your value. So that's where, building in those checkpoints, the retainer contract can have a limitation in it, and having those checkpoints to when you need to reevaluate your price point.
Oh, such a great point. So really that wraps up the pros and cons of hourly versus a retainer. There is a lot to think about, and you also need to remember what works for you may not work for someone else. So you need to think about your specific circumstances, your ideal client, how they prefer to work with you. Maybe it's hourly, maybe it's retainer. And if you are going to be really specific on only a couple type of services that you offer versus a, hey, I am going to do everything and I'm going to serve as like a fractional OBM for you, right? So many different things to think through, lots of different packages that you can create. And remember, just because you start with one thing doesn't mean that you have to stick with that one forever. You are going to learn, you are going to tweak, you are going to test, you are going to change, and that's okay. That is the beauty of starting an online business manager business, because it is this constant tweaking, this live living being, which is really exciting because it's not set in stone. Anything else that you would add there, Leah?
No, I would reinforce what you just said, is that to enjoy it and have fun with it and keep reinventing yourself, because that is the beauty. And don't be afraid to adjust those prices up and exclude the things that you don't love doing. Like you said, that's the beauty of this kind of business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, everyone, thank you for being on here today. As I mentioned at the very beginning, all of you who are part of OBM University, we are doing a deep dive on this, where we're going into pricing the blocks that we have, some creative things that we have seen people do, some hybrids that we've seen people do, and what we personally recommend until you get to a certain point. We also know that asking for money can be very challenging. And so we're going to talk through some of that too, and how to really make those shifts. So if you're interested in becoming an online business manager with Prowess Project and going through OBM University and joining our job pool, feel free to schedule time with us to just chat through it. I will put that in the chat right now. And if you're like, hey, awesome, your content is fantastic, I absolutely love it, definitely check out our resources page and join us in our OBM opportunity Facebook group. And what else do we have from Leah? So many good things that we're constantly putting out there. So again, if you need anything, let us know. Anything else, Leah, before we hop off?
Just keeping an eye on all the social channels. There's constantly new resources coming out, new things coming up. End of July, we might have some new workshops coming out. So all kinds of stuff. Keep an eye.
Fantastic. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. If you know anyone who would be a fantastic OBM, please let us know. Send them our way, and we will see you next week.